So here, before going to discuss about that some other types of pairs of angles, we need to discuss about that types of lines. Okay. So here, what is the first type of line here? That is intersecting lines. Okay. Intersecting lines means two lines passing through the same point. Two lines passing through the same common point or passing through the common point. Passing through the common point. Okay, then we will call those two lines are intersecting lines. So here two lines are passing through the same common point. Okay, then we will call those two lines are intersecting lines. So this line I am going to take it as L and this is M. Okay, so L and M, two lines are there. Those two lines are also passing through the same point. Now here, this point I am going to take it as some O. Okay, so lines L and M, those two also passing through the same point O. Then we will call these two lines are intersecting lines. And one more thing, intersecting lines means here it must be consisting of only two lines. Okay, so two lines passing through the same point, we will call those two are intersecting lines. And what we will call this common point, that is intersecting point. Okay, that point is known as here intersecting point or point of intersection. Or point of intersection. Okay, so which point we will call it as point of intersection or intersecting point? That is point O. Why? Because that is a common point. Here we have that only one of the point is there. Through that point, we have that two lines passing through that same point. Okay. Next one is concurrent lines. So concurrent lines means here three or more lines. Okay, intersecting lines means two lines passing through the same point. Here concurrent lines means three or more than three lines passing through the same point. Okay, three or more than three lines passing through the same point. Okay, we will call those lines are concurrent lines. Here I am going to consider these lines are L, M, N. Here I am taking the three lines L, M, N and those three also passing through the same point, that is P. So we will call those three lines are concurrent lines. Okay, now what we will call this common point? That is concurrent point. Concurrent point or point of concurrence. Okay, or we will call that point as a point of concurrence. In that name only there for that intersecting lines, that is intersecting point or point of intersection. In that name only there. Here that is these lines are concurrent lines, no? So here that point is a concurrent point or point of concurrence. Okay, and these lines also having another name, that is a family of lines. So concurrent lines also called it as a family of lines. We will call them as a family of lines also. Okay, so this is about that concurrent lines, and here the main point is the number of lines, minimum number of lines to form concurrent lines means that is 3. More than 3 lines, any maximum you can take that any number of lines. Okay, must be here the minimum number of lines to form that concurrent lines is 3. Okay, minimum number is 3, maximum is your wish, that is. Okay. Okay, after that we have that parallel lines. Here the lines are said to be parallel. When we can say that lines are parallel? If they do not meet at any point. Okay, two lines are said to be parallel if they do not have any common point. Here, previous two types of lines having that common point, no, but here do not have any common point. Do not have any common point. Is it clear? So here I am going to take this one as L and this is M. Two lines I taken here and those two lines are parallel. I am saying why? Because they do not have any common point. If I extended this line like this, okay, I extended the second one also, then also there is no any other common point, right? If I extended left side, here also there is no any common point. Okay, they never meet at any point. Those two lines never meet at any point. Then we can say that these two lines are parallel lines. Okay, and the distance between these two lines is always same. Is always same at any point. Okay, the distance between these two lines is always same at any point. You can take that. Okay, here this is A and this is B. So what is the distance between A, B? Here something is the distance means in straight form only we can find out, no? Here this is P and this is Q. So the distance between these two lines, that means what is the distance of PQ and what is the distance of AB means AB distance is equals to PQ. Okay, so the distance between those two lines, those two parallel lines at any point is always same. Okay, and they do not meet at any point. Okay, so we will call those two are parallel lines. So how to represent that parallel lines? Here, this is the symbol which one we need to use for that parallel lines. Okay, here what are those two lines? L and another one is M. So how to represent that parallel lines? L is parallel to M. So this is the representation for parallel lines. For example, this is some N and this is some Q. Okay, here N is parallel to Q. So like this way we need to represent that lines. If you take in that some other lines, that is N and this is Q. So here we can represent that N parallel to Q. Okay, so this is the representation of parallel lines. Next one, perpendicular lines. Here, two lines intersect each other. Two lines intersect each other at a right angle. Two lines intersect each other at a right angle means here at that intersection point the angle must be 90 degrees. The angle must be 90 degrees, then only we will call that those two lines are perpendicular lines. Okay. For looking, this is just like that intersecting lines only, no? Yes, those two are intersecting lines only. But when I am explaining that intersecting lines, I didn't say about that angle, right? But I am explaining about that perpendicular lines. Here we need to discuss about that angle. Okay, so that's why here the angle at that intersection point must be 90 degrees. Then only we will call those two lines are perpendicular lines. Okay, so what is the symbol we need to represent that perpendicular lines means? This is the symbol for perpendicular lines. Okay, so how to represent that given lines here? Here L is perpendicular to M. Okay, line L is perpendicular to line M. Okay, this is about that perpendicular lines. So next type and the last one is coincident lines. Here coincident lines means two lines are overlapped on each other. Two lines overlapped on each other. Here the first line I am going to take it as some A, B and this is C, D. Okay, here we can observe that two straight lines. One of that is AB, another one is CD. Okay, so those two lines also overlapped on each other and those two lines are having that infinitely many common points. How many common points are there here? Infinitely many common points are there. Why? Because at the time of explaining straight line, already I told you that a set of infinite points lies on a straight line. Yes or no? Set of infinite number of points lies on a straight line. So here we have that two straight lines. So one of the straight line is having too many points, means another straight line is also having the too many points only. No, if those two also overlapped on each other, then we can take that number of infinitely many common points are there here. Okay, so here what about that coincident lines means? Two lines overlapped on each other and having infinitely many common points. Okay, then we will call those two lines are coincident lines. Okay, so these all are the types of lines. So here next we need to discuss about that some other types of pairs of angles. Okay, already we discussed pairs of angles means complementary, supplementary and conjugate angles. So here we are going to discuss about that some other pairs of angles. Okay, so first one is adjacent angles. So here already we know that pairs means two angles, no? So here two angles formed by a common arm and at a common point. Then we will call those two angles are adjacent angles. So what about that? Here this is OA and this is OB and this is OC. Here I am going to take that three arms or three rays. Okay, ray is also considered as arm, right? So here these three are that three arms or three rays. So here what is the definition for that adjacent angles means two angles. Here two angles are there, no? If you consider this one as angle BOC is one of the angle, another one is angle COA. So here how many angles are there? Here this is one of the angle and this is another angle, X and Y. Okay, so here how many angles are formed? Two angles are formed. So two angles are formed by using the common arm. By using that common arm. Why that is a common arm? Because here OC is there, here also OC is there. Okay, when you observe this angle, here OC is there, and when you observe this angle, here also OC is there. So we will call that one as a common arm. So here OC is a common arm. Okay, so two angles are formed by a common arm and at a common point. And at a common point. Once observe that here X is also formed at O and Y is also formed at the point O only, no? So O is that a common point. So two angles are formed by common arm and at a common point, then we will call those two angles are adjacent angles. Is it clear? So here X and Y are adjacent angles. Okay. Next one. Linear pair. So here next what about that linear pair means here two adjacent angles forms here supplementary or straight angle. Two adjacent angles forms here supplementary also we can write. So supplementary means what? Sum of two angles is equals to 180 degrees only, no? And those two angles sum is forms here a straight angle or supplementary. Okay, then we will call those two angles are linear pairs. Those two angles are linear pair. Here the most important point is two angles must be adjacent. Two angles must be adjacent. Already we know that adjacent angles means two angles are formed by a common arm. Okay, so here let us take that here this is A and this is B. Okay, so shall we call A and B are adjacent angles? Yes, of course. Why? Because A and B having that common arm and those two also formed at a common point. No, that's why we can say that A and B are adjacent angles and those two angles are forms here supplementary. Supplementary means this is a straight line. On a straight line at that common point. At the common point, what is that angle here? That is 180 degrees only, no? So here A plus B is equals to 180 degrees. Okay, so we can say that two adjacent angles forms a straight angle, then we will call those two angles forms here linear pair. So linear pair means the sum of two angles must be equals to 180 degrees. Okay, and those two angles must be adjacent angles, not two individual angles. Okay, just example say that. Here this is 120 degrees and this is 60 degrees. So this is one of that example. Another one say that this is 120 degrees and this is 60 degrees. Just see the difference. Here this is 120, this is 60, this is 120, this is 60. So sum of these two is equals to 180, sum of these two angles also equals to 180. But here what I am saying, those two must be adjacent angles. So here these two angles are adjacent or not here. 120 and 60 having the common arm. So these angles we can say that this one forms here linear pair. This is not a linear pair. Why? Because the two different angles here are given. Okay, those two are different angles now here. 120 degrees is separate angle, 60 degrees is separate angle. Okay, those two also not having any common arm and those two angles are not formed at a common point. No, that's why we cannot say that these two are linear pairs. Okay, so we can say that those two angles must be adjacent angles and those two sum must be equals to 180 degrees. Then only we will call those two angles forms linear pair. Okay, so this is about that linear pair. So next type is vertically opposite angles. Okay, so what about that vertically opposite angles means? Here we need to take that intersecting lines. Okay, why we need to take that intersecting lines means I will tell that. Intersecting lines means two lines are passing through that same point, no? Okay, at that point once observe that here this is one of that arm and this is another arm. Okay, here one of the angle is formed or not. Okay, that is some x, and here also when you observe this one here also or else see that here this is O, A, B, C and D. So here AC is one of the line and BD is another line. Okay, those two also intersecting lines here. So when you observe that AOB, here one of the angle is there and BOC, here another angle is formed and COD, here also another angle we can form, and here AOD, here another angle is there, that is I am taking as W. So at that intersecting point totally how many angles are formed here? Totally 4 angles will be formed here. Okay, so at that intersection point opposite angles, at that intersection point the angles are formed opposite, angles formed oppositely, those two angles we will call it as vertically opposite angles. So here these two angles are formed at same common point only, no, and those two are opposite angles are not. In that heading only there, vertically opposite, which means two angles are formed and those two are opposite to each other. Okay, so here at that intersection point two opposite angles formed at intersection point, those two angles we will call it as vertically opposite angles. Okay, so here W and Y, those two also vertically opposite angles only, no? Okay, if you turn that one like this means then also we can observe that vertically opposite angles, those two also opposite angles only. Okay, so here how many pairs of vertically opposite angles are formed? Yes, two pairs of vertically opposite angles are formed. One is X, another one is Z. This is one of the pair. Another one is angle W and angle Y. Okay, so totally how many pairs of vertically opposite angles are formed here? Here, two pairs of vertically opposite angles are formed by intersecting lines. Okay, and one more, the most common point, that is an important point, vertically opposite angles are always equal. Why? Because when you observe, this is a straight line and this is also a straight line now here. Okay, there is no differences here. This is a straight line and this is also a straight line. So how much angle is formed here? The same angle must be formed here also, no? Okay, those two also having that must be same angles only will be formed. Why? Because this is one of the line and this is one of the straight line. Two lines are given. Okay, so here these two vertically opposite angles are equal. So angle X is equals to angle Z and angle Y is equals to angle W. Okay, so here what is the important point? That is, in that vertically opposite angles must be opposite pairs, which means where that vertically opposite angles are formed, those two vertically opposite angles are always equal. Okay. So this is about that vertically opposite angles. So still we discussed about that three different types of, three other types of pairs of angles. Now what are those? Adjacent angles, next linear pair, another one is vertically opposite angles. Okay, adjacent angles means it must be having that common arm and a common point. Okay, and linear pair means those two angles must be adjacent and its sum must be forms here a supplementary angle. Okay, and come to that vertically opposite angles means here vertically opposite angles are always equal. Okay, and by taking that intersecting lines at that intersecting point, in totally how many angles will be formed means 4 angles will be formed. How many pairs of vertically opposite angles are formed means 2 pairs of vertically opposite angles are formed here. Okay, so up to here types of pairs of angles completed. Okay, next we are going to discuss about that transversal.